And so that creates an interesting question about what the best matchup is for the Vikings in terms of the passing game. Is it a pretty good above average receiving back against these linebackers that have been struggling a little bit in coverage? Or is it a more talented group of wide receivers who actually, they haven't been having the best year thus far, but a more talented group of wide receivers up against what strike me as a more talented group of cornerbacks, plus they've got that safety help. What matchup do you think presents the most opportunities for the Vikings? What are the biggest risks of those matchups?
Definitely CJ Ham out of the backfield.
We'll see that. We'll see a little bit.
Put him in the Kyle Juszczyk role. Let him eat. Right? No, yeah, I do think there's going to be opportunities for Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. I mean, not that. Like you said, the Bears cornerbacks have been very talented and are very talented and have had some pretty strong performances, but it still feels like it mixed in between the great performances. There have been plays here and there where there's some space for players to operate. A couple of big plays against Prince Amukamara so far this season, and Kyle Fuller's a guy who will give you a lot of space at the line of scrimmage, and if you can kind of work him on that for a full 4 quarters and start taking some of that space, start getting him to creep up a little bit more and bite on some of those underneath throws. At times last year, you could hit him with the double move and have that space downfield. And there's some vulnerability here from the cornerbacks. And I don't know, it's sort of something you have to work at over the course of the game. So whether that means I don't know that makes it the best matchup, but I think there is some room there that eventually you can kind of break free if you keep kind of going after these cornerbacks. And I think that can be ultimately the difference in this game. But as you're sort of trying to work that and break that, I think it's the running back out of the backfield. It's Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. kind of doing their work, crossers like that with a running back out of the backfield and just it's not necessarily that you as the Vikings are isolating, we're going to get the ball to Dalvin Cook, but it's okay. We're going to have Cook coming out of the backfield. We're going to have Rudolph going one way, and you're going to have, a slot receiver going the other way. And that linebacker has to pick one of the three. And it's not about the receiver that you're trying to match him up with as it is the situation you're putting that linebacker in to have to make a decision. And then you throw the ball where he doesn't go.
That's fair. And plus, there's no Jair Alexander among these corners. They're talented, but they're not as talented as some of the corners the Vikings have already played against. So I find that kind of the cornerback situation interesting. You already mentioned ways to neutralize the pass rush include quick passes. They might also include screen passes. That puts an emphasis on cornerback tackling. No one is Trey Waynes when it comes to cornerback tackling, but I do have some questions about how capable these cornerbacks are at stopping the quick game with their tackling.
Prince Amukamara has been a solid tackler as long as he's been in Chicago. And Kyle Fuller used to struggle with that a lot more. And I think over the last couple years, he's become a lot better at wrapping up, and especially this season, I think, really stepping up and getting physical with receivers. But the person who has struggled the most with tackling in this Bears secondary is actually Eddie Jackson. I mean, that has been his big flaw. I mean, he's got 6 missed tackles through 2 games, and he's on pace to far eclipse. I think last year he missed 9 or 10, and he's already got 6 so far. So that's been an issue. Buster Screen has been missing some tackles as well. And somehow, some way, Clinton Dix has been one of the team's most consistent tacklers this year in the upset of the century.
Well, we'll see if that continues. All right, so we talked a lot about the Bears defense. We're on a bit of a time crunch, so let's move around to the offense. We have to talk about Mitch Trubisky for the brand. We'll talk a little bit about the throwing left thing, but more importantly, he's somebody that, a lot of people I think overstated his case as a second-year breakout player, or at least a guy who's improved. But I've always been down on him. I didn't think he was a good pick. I don't think he's played well. But despite all of that, he has disappointed me. I think he's played below my level of expectation that I've expected. I've compared him to Christian Ponder. He seems to not like to push the ball downfield. He seems to be kind of a short passer. Even though he's a short passer, he seems kind of inaccurate. He does have some moves with his legs. What's the deal here, man? I thought he'd be better.
Yeah, everybody did, right? I mean, that was all the talk all off season was, year 2 in Matt Nagy's offense, year 3 in the NFL. he's got, Matt Nagy said last year we're on offense 101 and this year we're on 202 and all this stuff about how he's commanding the huddle and he's got all this confidence and he's firing, and then not coming out that way. And this is obviously the magic question, right? We don't have the exact answer from outside of the organization of what is exactly going on, but clearly the quarterback that started week one and we've seen through 3 weeks even looks worse than the guy who finished last season. Like there were games at the end of last year and like even the last drive against Philadelphia where there were it was like he was starting to string together some of these better plays and more accurate throwing downfield, and really like, oh, he's on the cusp of something. And then we come back this year and we're kind of back a few steps from where we finished last season. So it feels like it's sort of this delicate back and forth of how much the Bears offense wants to allow him to do versus trying to force him to just take some of the quick throws and get some rhythm there. But then it's also like holding him back from being able to throw more downfield and do more explosive plays and have a more dynamic offense. But at the same time, sometimes when they let him do that, you see either interceptions or dropped interceptions and inaccurate and forced throws downfield when he just tries to do too much, tries to play a lot of that hero ball, as Matt Waldman would say, and just, put the ball in harm's way. So it's like this balance of like, how much might Matt Nagy's offense be holding Mitchell Trubisky back from being better than he is right now versus how much are they just kind of holding him together? And if they had just let him loose, is he going to be really not taking care of the ball all over the field? So I think we're seeing expectations for Trubisky shift from, is this going to become a great quarterback, to how good of a quarterback, are we in the Christian Ponder, Blake Bortles area? Are we in more the Alex Smith, Andy Dalton area? And like, how far into quarterback purgatory might the Bears be headed? And how successful can they be if Mitchell Trubisky's not going to be the reason they win every week? Because it seems like at this point, when you have guys like Kyle Allen stepping into games and throwing 4 touchdowns, and Luke Falk steps in for the Jets and completes 80% of his passes. I mean, this is the era of any quarterback seems to be able to step in and produce. And the fact that Trubisky can't, even, in his third season, the second year in this offense, that sort of is telling you what he is in his career right now.
Can he throw left?
It's been, I don't want to say, it's not like drastically better, but he can, right? Like the problem is when you're talking like underneath, he can throw, I mean, when it's short of the sticks under 10 yards, he can throw left, he can throw right, and it's fine. When you start talking about throwing downfield, certainly from a mechanic standpoint, it tends to get wonkier when he's throwing deep into the left, because as he's sort of stepping into his throw, he'll step his plant foot, his left foot too wide because he's going to the left rather than the right. And sometimes you'll see it wonky, but he also hasn't been phenomenal throwing downfield to the right this season either. So like, I don't know how much of it is a left versus right as it is a throwing across the field, across the numbers downfield issue. So we've seen him hit a couple of deep shots to the left and the right. And so far it's the direction is not the issue.
So if you're game planning against him, do you just rush for, let coverage do its job, or do you think you can increase some opportunities for turnovers by adding some additional pressure with the blitz? What do you think is kind of the best opportunity against him?
It depends on, I mean, like obviously if you can rush for and get a lot of pressure, of course, that's what you want to do. But the book on Trubisky for a lot of his career has been trying to throw a lot of different things at him from a looks standpoint. And it doesn't mean you're blitzing every time, but if you bring the pass rush from different spots and show him pass rush in one area and come elsewhere. I mean, this Bears offensive line has been maybe their biggest weakness this season. I mean, even as much as Trubisky has struggled, a lot of his struggles have also been offensive line related. Despite it being the same 5 offensive line starters from last year, Kyle Long has been absolutely atrocious, one of the worst guards in the NFL this season. And they had an injury at right tackle last week, and their center, James Daniels, he moved over from left guard last year and seems to still be kind of struggling with readjusting to the center position, and he's been a disappointment. So like the Packers in week 1 really figured it out. They stunted like crazy and brought different pass rushers from everywhere, and this offensive line could never consistently pick it up. There were always free rushers coming through. Even the Packers had a 3-man rush where, I mean, it was a clean shot to the quarterback where they just had, overload on one side and somebody kind of came sneaking through. And I mean, it's just little things like that you can't have successful offense in the face of. So that's kind of where I would look for Minnesota. Is I know a guy like Mike Zimmer doesn't get too crazy with a ton of that, but if you're putting a couple of those A gap looks, double A gap linebackers, and then bring a cornerback off the edge when the A gap linebackers drop back and loop people in and out, I think that's the best way to get in Mitchell Trubisky's head. It doesn't have to be 7 guys, but if that 5th guy is just running through and getting after Trubisky, I think that'll be effective. And then you can kind of just say, hey, Mitch, beat us with your arm. If you take a lead and force the Bears to kind of have to pass back into this game. And so far, trying to force Trubisky to beat you with the pass has been a pretty successful strategy.
Let's talk about that offensive line. I know it's always difficult, especially when it comes to offensive linemen, but just generally difficult to ask why. But I feel like every individual offensive lineman has played below what I had expected for them this year. Obviously, with Bobby Massey out with the concussion, that's not going to be as relevant at right tackle. There's just going to be a downgrade of that position just because. But do you know why everybody is playing worse? Whitehair hasn't been awful, but I feel like everybody has played worse than they did last year.
Yeah, and I think Charles Leno has been fine. I mean, I think the left guard and left tackle, generally speaking, there's always some variance there, but over the 3-game sample size, I think the Bears feel pretty good about those 2 guys. But then with Kyle Long, I don't know the why, but I do know the what. He's just mentally not seeing it. I mean, there are just plays when he's not, in the running game, he's not getting to the second level. He's just kind of stuck on his guy, or a linebacker comes into his gap and he just either doesn't see it or doesn't think it's his responsibility. When you kind of look at the structure of the play, you feel like that was Kyle Long's guy and nobody got him. And same in pass protection. Sometimes they'll stunt at him and he just isn't seeing it. And from a technique standpoint, he's just not anywhere nearly as consistent as he used to be. And I'm not sure why. He's not just old and weak. It's just his hands aren't in the right place. And sometimes he gets off balance and like I said, I know the what, I don't know the why with Kyle Long. And then Bobby Massey has been weak. Sorry, what?
Old and weak.
A little, and I don't know if you saw, but after the win in Washington, Tariq Cohen went on Instagram Live from the locker room, and a fully naked Kyle Long walks into the background, package and all for the internet to see. So it's been a long week for Kyle Long, certainly. But no, so right tackle Bobby Massey last week, just randomly Monday had vertigo and missed the game. I don't know that they ever called it a concussion. He's listed as
sorry, that's my mistake. Yeah, he had vertigo. Yeah.
And they listed as illness on the injury report this week, but he was a full participant on Wednesday, and I'm guessing he should be good to go. And Kyle Long's had a hip injury that's been on the injury report, but I don't know that has been the reason. The hip looked fine when he was totally naked in the locker room, so I don't think that's been a problem for him too. He's just, I think he's just kind of past his prime, and this will probably be his last year in the Bears starting lineup. And then James Daniels, really big disappointment. The whole talk all offseason was that, well, he's a better fit at center. It's a better spot for him, and it's very clearly not been through 3 games. And maybe he's still kind of adjusting to making the calls and having to go from the snap into his block and sort of make that step process be smooth and not just snap and then block. It's kind of got to be part of the same thing. But it's also been some mental stuff from him too. I think maybe having to make those protection calls and make sure everyone's in their place can be a lot for him to have to think about and deal with on every play. And maybe it's been too much, but they're locked in with these guys in the spots that they are now. So they're just going to have to live with the ups and downs. And I think that's a real major concern for me in this game.
Will they ever make a switch back between center and left guard?
I don't know that they would during the season. And, and I try and give Harry Heaston, their offensive line coach, the benefit of the doubt. I mean, for those who don't know, he was the Notre Dame offensive line coach to make, all those Notre Dame linemen, Quentin Nelson, and I'm struggling to think of all of them. Mike McGlinchey. Yeah, I mean, he is a proven offensive line talent developer at the college level and has coached in the NFL before, was actually the Bears offensive line coach in the Lovie Smith days when their offensive line was pretty darn good. So I have to give him some benefit of the doubt and kind of say, okay, give James Daniels some time and give Kyle Long some time, and maybe they'll start to turn it around because he knows offensive line a heck of a lot better than I do. But I don't know if, you move Cody Whitehair to left guard, if there's going to be, or you move Cody Whitehair back to center and Daniels to left guard, if that's going to have its own kind of adjustment period where things are going to struggle a bit at first. So you might as well kind of stick through what you're doing now, unless